waiting for a minute. I see some people coming. Okay, that's good. Thank you. Hi.
Hello.
Come on in.
Look what I brought.
Oh boy, looks familiar.
Not one, two.
Oh, wow.
I brought a bunch of polite kids.
Okay. Everyone be safe. Hi, good to welcome. Hi, good job. Hi, folks.
They're a mess right over there. I just told Rabbi Leider I brought polite kids. Don't make me a liar.
You're by the door.
There. He knows.
Oh, did you say you brought bright kids?
No, it said polite kids.
Oh, polite kids. So yeah, I'm not either.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
All right, let's begin.
Bye.
Fellas, come on in. The Baileys are coming in droves. Hi. Everybody take a seat. Okay. Alrighty, anyhow, I want to welcome everybody here today. This class is going to be a sikha. We're going to say a sikha of the Rebbe each week. The Rebbe used to speak publicly in many different times, mostly on Shabbos Havarchim, the Shabbos that we bless the new month, whatever the month was. That was a major for bringing, a major gathering. But there were other times he spoke also on holidays, special holidays, on each of the holidays, Purim, the conclusion of holidays, Passover, Shavuos, Sukkot. He used to be big for bringings, and he would give kosher bracha, cups of wine out, at the end of the holiday. And sometimes just other reasons, all kinds of different reasons. When the Rebbe spoke, he spoke two different things. He would say a sikha, which is what we're going to be learning, and he would say a mimer. A mimer was a very deep Hasidic discourse. He said it with his eyes closed. It was very deep and very mystical. And usually a Fabrengen had one mimer, one discourse. And but the majority of the Fabrengens were sikhas. The word sikha means a conversation. It is a lighter, generally it's known as a lighter conversation. For example, in Turkey Avos it says, don't speak with a woman who's not your wife, even if yours wife. It says, Al tirma sikha ima isha. It uses the same term as sikha. And it means a general type of conversation. Nothing deep, nothing heavy duty. So when the Rebbe would speak a sikha, there were different kinds of sikhas. There were sikhas where he would give a siyum unattracted to the Talmud. He concluded unattracted to the Talmud. And very often he would relate that tractate to some event going on or some aspect, something you want to bring up. A sikha could be something dealing with the world, what's going on in the world. When all kinds of major things happened, when the Yom Kippur War broke out, or where the 6-Day War, and all kinds of things like that. Whenever we speak sikhas and talk about these events and things like that, he would very often study and analyze a Rashi on Chumash and go over it and ask questions on it and answer them. And these were also in the realm of the sikha. The Rebbe used to make major farbrengens on all of the major Hasidic holidays as well. These were big farbrengens, and we very often understood that when we spoke at these farbrengens, there were a lot of very big things and important things that the Rebbe would say. In fact, he initiated all of the mitzvah campaigns that we know of today. They were initiated at farbrengens and sikhas. We spoke about them at sikha. But anyhow, getting back to the major occasions in the world, he would speak on Yutes Kislev, the 19th of Kislev, which was the anniversary of when the Alter Rebbe, founder of the Chabad movement, was released from Tsarist prison. He spoke on Yud Shvat, the Yortzeit of his father-in-law, also the anniversary when he became Rebbe also. Yud Aleph Nisan, his birthday, just before Pesach. Other occasions were
Yud Beis, Yud Gimel.
I'm coming to you based on this in a minute.
Yidam Netzach.
Right? Chaf of his father's Yortzeit. So these are special times, and usually relate. Oh, Vav Tishrei, his mother's Yortzeit as well, between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. One of the major Farbrengen, and people used to come from all over the world to come to these Farbrengens and to hear what the Rebbe was saying. And in early days, you could only hear the Rebbe by coming to 770 and hearing him speak. Later, we made telephone hookups that they broadcast it by telephone, and places would connect the telephone to a speaker, and you would listen through the speaker. I remember when I was in Kfar Chabad in 1973, 74, they had telephone hookups. So we would come to a Beis Midrash, and they would hook up the telephone, and we would be able to hear the Rebbe speak through the speaker then. Later on, we had satellite dishes, and we were able to actually see the Farbrengen on satellite. And then later, we were able to see it on TV. They were broadcast actually live on television. So each time, people were interested in finding out what the Rebbe had to say. There are many stories about people who would completely not religious and sometimes not even Jewish, who were flipping the channels of their television, and they would see the Rebbe on TV, and they would be mesmerized by it, and they would listen carefully, and they would follow along. Some movie star with John Voight, I think, got involved that way, and they were mesmerized by the words of the Rebbe and the insight, the prophecy of the Rebbe through these sichas, and they would be like stuck on it the entire time. So the evolution of the Rebbe sichas is long, and Baruch Hashem, today we have snippets of them that we show now on the computer, on the internet, and people can watch in many, many different ways, through Chabad.org and many other ways. The sichas have been transcribed, and there are books in them and pamphlets in them. Right after Farbrengen, there were a number of people who were called chosrin, who would review the Farbrengen by heart, and the Farbrengen took place on Shabbos. People couldn't write it down, so they would, they have these chosrin after the Farbrengen, and they would review. Everybody would gather around them, and they would review and memorize the Rebbe sichas by heart. It was an incredible thing. Somebody I know, once when he was a bacher, when he was single, newly, and then he became newly married, had this brilliant idea of recording the Rebbe's sichas on Shabbos. Record the Farbrengen on Shabbos. He didn't turn on anything, and he recorded it. He had his equipment under the table, and he had a non-Jew turn it on. And when it was found out that he did that, he was sent into exile. When it came time for him to become a rabbi of the community, they sent him far away as a form of punishment for doing that. It was not appropriate. So, but nevertheless, people tried in any which way they could to transcribe the sichas, to write them down, because each one of them really had tremendous wisdom and information in it. Anyhow, the sicha I want to go over with you now, was said on this parsha, the Parsha of Bala, which we'll be reading this Shabbos, in 1987. 1987. And it was said that day was the 14th of Tammuz, it just took place 2 days after Yud Beis Tammuz. Okay? Yud Beis, we're going to talk about that, what that means in a second. Anyhow, so the Rebbe started off with saying that the Shabbos carries a strong connection and association with the days of liberation of Yud Beis and Yud Gimel Tammuz, the 12th and 13th of Tammuz, even though it took place afterwards, but it's connected to the 12th. In this case, this Shabbos is on Yud Beis Tammuz. It takes place on Yud Beis Tammuz. So there's something very special about this Shabbos. He says Shabbos affects completion and elevation and all of the toil of the previous 6 days. So all the Shabbos, as we know, is the 7th day of the week, and Shabbos is the culmination of the previous 6 days. It was during those days that preparation was made for Shabbos, and only one who prepares on the eve of Shabbos will be able to eat on Shabbos. We know that Shabbos is the 7th day of the week, and on Shabbos, all the preparations that we made are culminated. They come together on Shabbos. So, for example, during the week, if you see something nice, like a nice piece of fish, or you're in Ralph's and you see a nice roast or something like that, you say, oh, you know what? I'm not going to eat it tonight. I'm going to save it for Shabbos. You see a nice shirt or a nice piece of clothing or something like that, you save it for Shabbos. So we prepare on Shabbos before Shabbos on Shabbos. It says this is more evident when the 12th and 13th of Tammuz occurs on Thursday and Friday, as it did this year when this Seichel was given. So that Shabbos follows them directly. In fact, since we add from the profane to the holy, Shabbos actually begins on the 13th of Tammuz, which was Friday. So he says, let's therefore take time to remember the occasions, the occurrences surrounding the liberation, in a way that these days will be remembered and come into being, as it says in the Lubavitcher. By properly remembering, we relive the original events, and we rise higher with good resolutions for proper action. So what happened exactly on Yud Beis Tammuz? What was significant? So we know that the previous Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, was arrested by the communists. I believe it was in 1927. He was arrested by the communist regime during the worst times of Stalinism, when rabbis were being killed and religious institutions, not just Jewish ones, but all religious institutions, were being closed. Stalin was a vicious murderer and a horrible anti-Semite, as we know. During the times of Stalin, many millions of people were killed. Not just Jews, but others as well. Millions were killed. So during this time, many of the rabbis of Russia tried to escape, and many left, and many were killed. Teachers, rabbis, Moalim, Shoftim, whoever, they were killed. It was a very harsh, difficult time to be a religious Jew, and certainly to be a rabbi during these difficult times. As bad as it was later on, during later regimes in Russia, Stalinism was acknowledged as the worst time of all. And probably enemy number one by Stalin was the previous Rebbe. Why? Because the Rebbe did not believe in just staying put by his own community and serving his own community, but the Rebbe believed in outreach, getting out there, opening mikvahs, opening synagogues, sending his Hasidim out to teach people. So because of that, he was an extremely big threat to Russia and to their policy of being anti-religious. The interesting thing about it was, and the previous Rebbe, I think we're going to mention later in Seichel, but the previous Rebbe pointed out during this time, before he was arrested, was that the law in Russia was to allow freedom of religion. It was the law of Russia. So by persecuting rabbis, they were breaking their own laws. But the fact is, nevertheless, eventually, the Rebbe was incarcerated. He was arrested by the Jewish regime. There was a Jewish section of the Communist Party called the Yivseksia. Yivseksia means the Jewish, Yiv, Seksia, Jewish section. and they had him arrested. They brought over their people to him, and they took him away. He was incarcerated for, I believe, 54 days, and then he was sentenced to death, as the Alter Rebbe was in his day, and eventually it was commuted to exile in Siberia, and then eventually, miraculously, through the intervention of many leaders in the world, especially Herbert Hoover in the United States, the President of the United States at the time, but through his intervention, he was released. He was notified on Yud Beis Tammuz of his release, the 12th of Tammuz, and he was actually released on the 13th of Tammuz. But the fact is that Yud Beis Tammuz and Yud Gimel Tammuz are therefore known today as very auspicious days, very happy days. Hasidim don't say Tachnun during these days, and we make Farbrengens during this time as well. So, the Rebbe points out, he says, that the liberation of Yud Beis Tammuz, not just was the Rebbe released from prison, but a new era spreading Torah and Yiddishkeit began on that day. It was a significant day in terms of something major happened, not just in Russia, not just by the Hasidim, but for all Jews around the world. Because it was after Yud Beis Tammuz, after Yud Beis Tammuz, that the Rebbe came out more actively than ever with his campaigns of spreading Judaism throughout Russia and ultimately throughout the world. He says it saw an initiation of the dissemination of the well springs of Hasidus to the four corners of the globe. Now, we associate Chabad's outreach program with the current Rebbe, Rebbe Menachem Mendelssohn. But in reality, the Rebbe always believed that it was his father-in-law who was the one who really initiated these campaigns and this whole attitude of what's going on. The Rebbe believed very much that the Rebbe was very close to his father-in-law, and the previous Rebbe had no sons, only 3 daughters, and he was very, very close to his son-in-law, the Rebbe, Rebbe Menachem Mendel, and certainly they talked at length, and the previous Rebbe gave over his philosophy of Judaism and Jewish life and what he expected. And even though the previous Rebbe came to America a broken man, he was ill, he was in a wheelchair, he had multiple sclerosis, he suffered from multiple sclerosis, and he died I believe at the age of 60, a relatively young age, in 1950. And he was not well. He used to, when he came here, they used to have a driver who would drive him around Manhattan, drive him around New York so that he would breathe air. In those days, I guess New York had clean air. And he would drive around just so his lungs would be filled with cleaner air. And he needed that. So he was not a well man. And towards the end, when he spoke, talking about the previous Rebbe now, when he spoke, he would speak very gently so that you could hardly hear him. And eventually, towards the end, they would only invite a few people to come into his office, and he would give over his sikhas to these few. And you'd have to listen very, very carefully. It was before my time. You'd have to listen very, very carefully and quietly. And then these people would go out, and they would tell everybody else what the Rebbe spoke about. These discourses themselves were transcribed into collections of books called Likutei Diburim, which are available today. I think eventually I heard a rumor that they're going to be translated into English, which would be a tremendous thing. The previous Rebbe's sikhas, Likutei Diburim, were known to be quite relevant and quite contemporary in terms of what he talked about. But nevertheless, the days of Yud Beis and Yud Tammuz became very, very auspicious and major days of celebration among the Hasidim. The Rebbe says the previous Rebbe followed a path of divine service which saw him continually rise from level to level. In the yeshivas today, we study, the most popular writings that we study, at least when I was in yeshiva, were the Mamarim and the Sikhs of the previous Rebbe. They were not difficult. but they were very deep, and they were very easy to understand. As the Gemara says, that the sages have no rest, for they steadily rise from strength to strength. Tzaddikim ein lahem menucha, olam hazeh v'olam haba. Tzaddikim have no rest, whether it's in this world or in the world to come. So the previous Rebbe would continually rise from level to level, as we found that his later sichos and later mamarim were deeper than the earlier ones. Nevertheless, there were times in the previous Rebbe's life that saw a quantum leap in the manner of liberation as compared to the previous position, such as the day of Yud Beis Tammuz. So for the previous Rebbe, his goal, his motto was liberation. And Yud Beis Tammuz is a day of liberation. What does it mean? We'll see what this means in a minute. For subsequent to that liberation, his efforts in spreading Torah, Yiddishkeit, and Hasidus were multiplied, manifold, and became openly revealed to all, even the non-Jews. And non-Jews were even touched by the previous Rebbe, by who he was and what he said. Very often, he would invite non-Jewish leaders to come and to meet with him, to talk with him. This was, for a Hasidic Rebbe, this was very, very unusual. You know, when the Rebbe became a citizen, when the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe became a citizen, so they did something very remarkable, and that is they brought officials to the Rebbe. You know, usually if you become a citizen, you go to City Hall, or you go to the signing in, or things like that. It's very, very unusual to have officials come to you and sign you in there, you know, for citizenship. But because the Rebbe was of such a great stature, and also he was not well, it was very difficult for him to get out, they brought judges and other officials to his office, and you can see it on YouTube. In fact, it's remarkable how they came to him and they signed him in and made him a citizen. And I think that the son-in-law Rebbe was one of the witnesses to that. So it was really quite a remarkable thing. The previous Rebbe loved this country very, very much. He felt it was a country of freedom. It was a country that God blessed. And especially after where he came from, in Russia, and what he went through, and what he saw that Jewish people were going through, especially even 1950. This was the, kind of Stalin, Khrushchev, very, really severe anti-Semitic decrees during that time. But nevertheless, the Rebbe recognized that America was really the Golden Medina, really the golden land. And when the Rebbe referred to it as the Golden Medina, he meant it in terms of freedom of religion and freedom for Jews to practice whichever way they can. As a side point, when I was a teenager, interestingly, I was very involved with Soviet Jewry movements. Remember those days they used to have demonstrations and all kinds of things and protests and all that stuff. So it was before I was involved with Chabad. I was very active with these things. I found out later the Rebbe was opposed to demonstrations. He felt they were dangerous and negative. But during that time, I, under an alias, I wrote to the Soviet embassy in Canada, and I asked them to send me literature about Jewish life in Russia. I didn't say that I was Jewish, I just asked them for information. And they sent me, and I ended up becoming on their mailing list. I guess today I would probably be summoned to the House of Un-American Activities, maybe, I don't know. But they put me on their mailing list. And for many years after that, I would receive their magazines and their literature. And it was published by a section of the Communist Party that would publish propaganda about Jewish life, and it was in English because I wrote to the the embassy in Canada, and it was fascinating what they wrote. For example, they said that people are complaining that they're closing synagogues. So they said it's not true. I mean, obviously it was true. It's not true. In fact, we are not hypocrites. I remember to this day, we are not hypocrites. In America, people don't go to synagogue. So they're having synagogues that are empty shelves and no one's going to them. In Russia, we don't do that. We see people aren't coming to the synagogues, so we use the synagogues for another purpose, for other purposes that are more beneficial to people, And they would have articles about Israel, obviously very anti-Israel, and they would have articles of pure propaganda. But they believed in what they were saying, and they disseminated these things. So everybody knew it wasn't true. And it was during this time also that people were going to Russia, bringing tefillin in, and Jewish books, and things like that. So when the previous Rebbe came to America, he saw the freedom in this country, and that Jews were respected, and Jews were permitted to practice their religion freely. He was astounded by this, astounded by it. And it gave him the greatest respect of all. But at the same time, the Rebbe believed very much that America had a danger also. Even though it was a beautiful, wonderful place, but there was inherent in it a serious danger too. And that danger obviously was assimilation. So he was very afraid that Jews would assimilate, in fact, as they did in many respects. And they intermarried and all of the things that happened. The Rebbe understood the dangers of American life very, very well. And I'm sure during his many, many conversations, private conversations with his son-in-law, they discussed this. And they discussed what to do about it and how to act about it. And very often people would come to the previous Rebbe and they would ask the Rebbe questions about their children or about Jewish life. And the previous Rebbe would send them to his son-in-law. And his son-in-law would answer. Sometimes his son-in-law would not know the answer to something, or would not know what the proper answer would be. He would go to his father-in-law, and his father-in-law would instruct him what to answer. And these teachings from his father-in-law became part of the Rebbe's, present Rebbe's philosophy of life, and especially in terms of his outreach in Judaism. He says that the previous Rebbe wrote in his letter, he said regarding Yud Beis Tammuz, he said, on that day, Yud Beis Tammuz, it became revealed to all that the divine service in which I labored to spread Torah and strength, our religion was legal and lawful according to the law of the land. The fact that he was released from prison was a vindication of the fact, he believed, that he was in compliance with the law. They would not have released him if he was breaking the law by spreading Judaism and these things. So in his letter itself, he said that this is a vindication of the fact that what I am doing is legal. Not that it made much difference to the authorities, of course, but this is what, in fact, later on, many of the Jewish leaders would come along and emphasize that point, that it is legal to practice religion in Soviet Russia. You guys know Soviet Russia? Communist. Being the Nasi of a generation, the Nasi is the leader of the generation. We are told, Nasi hu hakol. The Nasi is everything. The Nasi encapsulates every part of Jewish aspect. His experiences influenced and helped everyone. As the Rebbe expressed it, again in the previous Rebbe's letters, he says, not me alone did the Holy One, blessed be He, liberate on the 12th of Tammuz, but also all those who cherish our Holy Torah, who observe mitzvahs, and even those who are only called by the name of Jew. It says, B'Shem Yisrael Yechuna. Even to those who are, the only thing that's Jewish, he writes, the only thing that's Jewish about them is that they're a Jew, that they're called by the name Jew. But other than that, they have no other aspect of them that's Jewish. They don't practice, they don't do anything that is a Jewish observance in any way. But even they are affected by the liberation by the previous. And we see later how true his words were, that so many hundreds of thousands or millions even of non-affected, disaffected Jews who had no Jewish religion or relationship or education came back to Judaism was remarkable. So even they were affected as well in a very deep way. The Rebbe continues, the present Rebbe continues. Every year at this time, a unique opportunity and potential presents itself to increase quantitatively and qualitatively in all aspects of Yiddishkeit for self and others, to spread Torah and Hasidus to the outside. It takes the shape of a liberation immeasurably higher than anything previously possible. And we know that Jewish holidays do not run linearly. They don't run from one point to the other. We don't say Pesach took place 3,200 years ago. We don't say that Yud Beis Tammuz took place 100 years ago. We say that when these holidays come during the year, when these important events come during the year, they continue during the year. That every year on this occasion, a special divine energy comes down to earth, which inculcates the aspects of that particular event, and it permeates the world as well. Same thing is true about birthdays and anniversaries. Why are these things so special? Why is it so special to observe an anniversary or a birthday or any type of occasion like that? Because there is an influence, a divine spirituality that comes down in the world and fills the world with that energy each year on that particular time. So when Yud Beis Tammuz comes down during this time, what is the theme of Yud Beis Tammuz, the Rebbe says, is the theme of liberation. And it's higher each year than the previous one. It's greater than the previous one.
Rabbi Leider, so just to clarify, you're saying that in Judaism time is not completely one directional or linear,
Right.
but rather it's
Cyclical.
it's kind of a cycle that moves forward in
That's
time,
right.
and that cycle is the Jewish year. Okay.
Judaism in general is like that, by the way. You'll notice that everything in Judaism is not linear. It's cyclical.
I was putting on tefillin
Give me a few
cyclical.
examples. What?
I was putting on tefillin cyclical.
You're going in a circle of motion.
Around and around and around.
I'm going to sleep. Okay, fine.
Right?
All right.
Tzitzis.
Okay, they're not. That's not a circle.
It flows out. Tzitzis flows out.
Okay.
A wedding ring
Right.
is round. A mezuzah is pointed down like that. Again, it's moving down. The energy goes through and it goes to the house. The energy of the mezuzah permeates the house. Torah, when we study Torah, it permeates the world. It just moves around the world. There is not one mitzvah that does not have that quality to it. Every mitzvah is cyclical. Just yesterday, I was at a Shiva house, and the first thing that we eat at a Shiva house, if you're an Ashkenazi, is a hard-boiled egg. If you're a Sephardi, garbanzo beans or lentils.
And fish.
Huh?
And fish.
And fish.
White fish.
I don't think what you mean as cyclical is a physical thing. Like,
Huh?
when you say cyclical, I don't think you mean as a physical thing, like literally going
Right.
in a circle.
Right.
I think you mean
But
more
some
like,
of them are very physical. For example, the physical things we do, the mitzvahs we do, which are done with physical things, are also very much a Torah scroll. We roll it, roll it, roll it.
that's not a cycle. That's not a cycle. You're saying a circle. A cycle means that it's constantly done again. Like for
It
things
is.
that are linear, it's like it's done once.
But a cycle is like that. Isn't the Torah a cycle?
Yes, you're constantly doing over and over again. But
Over
it's
and
not,
over again.
But just the rolling of the Torah, that's not the cycle part. The cycle part of the Torah is when you're actually reading it over and over.
True. But that's also cyclical. Isn't
Like,
it?
like the Gemara, you finish, you start
At the
again.
end, Simchas Torah, we finished the reading of the Torah, and we started it all over again.
And even with the oral Torah, the Hadron prayer doesn't mention, okay, we finished and we're done. In the completion prayer, we say, may we return to whichever section or
May
Masechta
we
we
return
learned.
back to this spectrum.
Right.
Everything's like it. Every aspect, davening.
You do it every day.
Huh?
You do it every day. It's a constant cycle.
Every day we go over and over, In Chabad, we say chitas every day. Okay? Chumash, the Hill of Tanya, a certain section. Many people do Daf Yomi every day. They learn Perak Rambam, or 3 Perakim Rambam every day. So, I do them every day, and I try to do it more in the morning, so I don't forget about it later on in the day. So, here you do, every morning, usually before I come to shul, I do, they're collecting garbage. I do the Tanya, and I go over the Chumash Rashi portion, and the Hillim I do, davening, and I try to do some of the daf, the Gemara daf, or I finish it right when I come home, or whatever. It's a lot. The Rambam, and you finish it all, you've done everything, and there's a sense of completion and accomplishment. Look what I've done. I've done all this. And the next morning, all over again. All over again. Everything repeats itself all over again. That's okay. I got the cycle. We got work to do. Go ahead, guys. You go upstairs.
Thank you.
Go ahead. So, there's the idea of completion, but it's not completed. It's going on and on, right?
Well, you can
Everything
call it,
what?
how about you can call it rejuvenation?
Yeah, rejuvenation,
Yeah.
right? Every year.
Redoing the Jewish thing.
Rejuvenation.
That's what it is.
Okay, Benny's back.
Very
Good.
nice.
You finish fasting on Tisha B'Av. Boy, that was rough. The whole time, 25 hours I fasted, And then what happens after that? Next year you have another Tisha B'Av. Right? So that's how it works. One thing leads to another. We were kibitzing on Pesach at our Seder, our small little Seder. We're sitting around the table and saying, didn't we do this just last year? Here we go again. Doing it again. But that's Jewish life. Over and over. And each year we take new things and we see it. And that's why he points out that that Yud-Beis Talmud is an aspect of liberation. Because when you are doing things over and over, you're sort of not stuck in something, but you're living in it. You're liberated from it. You are reliving it every year. And you become free through it. So you don't have to think about it anymore. The liberation of the previous Rebbe, he said, was a divine miracle. It was a miracle that so people did not survive. There are many people who were killed. Many friends of mine have grandfathers who were taken away and were never seen again. Many of them. They came, the KGB came in the middle of the night. They took away their grandfather, and they never saw him again. Never saw him again. They never knew what happened. The Rebbe's father was sent to Siberian exile for being a rabbi, and he died there in Siberia, Alma-Ata, in Siberia. They never saw him. He went eventually with his wife. She followed him there. But his son never saw him again after he was taken away. Never saw him again. So the fact is that, these types of things happen all the time. And everyone was worried and afraid of the knock on the door. When it happened, usually that was it. And a man of the stature of the previous Rebbe to have survived something like that was incredible. In the jail, they tortured him. They put a gun to his head, and it was a miracle that he survived. And he himself recognized the fact, and his father and his son-in-law recognized the fact that it was a tremendous miracle. He says it occurred through natural channels. Even though it was a miracle, it happened through natural channels by the involvement of government ministers and international diplomatic pressure. So, world leaders, especially in the United States, were used to help him get out. He said, and later on, after he was released from communist prison, later on they helped during the Nazi occupation of Poland.
Thank you.
During the Nazi occupation of Poland, they helped get him out of Warsaw as well. He was in Warsaw in 1941, and he was 1940, and he was brought out. And that itself was a remarkable, unbelievable story of how a Nazi officer, high-ranking Nazi officer, escorted him out of Russia.
Herman Bloch.
What?
His name is Bloch.
Bloch, Ernest Bloch.
Right.
It was an amazing thing. He was a Nazi officer in full uniform, and he got the Rebbe out of prison. We may learn from this that the divine service of liberation in the diaspora, in the Galut where we live, must function through the guise of nature. Although we must prepare ourselves for redemption by first accepting the divine assistance in the supernatural manner. So there's an expression, Ein somten al hanes. Don't depend on miracles. Don't depend on them. We are supposed to do what we have to do through natural means, but at the same time, we can expect a miracle. Wasn't there a famous saying by Ben Gurion that Israel doesn't depend on miracles, they count on it.
Yes.
Something like that. They count on it.
We
They
make-
live by miracles. Huh?
We make the miracle.
We make the miracles. So, Jews are like that. And especially in Chabad, we certainly believe in that. We've seen so many miracles. Our own building happened through a tremendous miracle, many miracles. How we got this building, those of you who remember what happened during that time, was an amazing miracle. But it was done through nature, through, all the various things we have to do, through dealing
The
with...
Ishtadlut here.
Huh?
The Ishtadlut here.
Yeah, Ishtadlus. You have to make the effort. You need to make the effort. That's how it is through everything. And in fact, so therefore, in the previous Rebbe's situation, a great deal of assistance was made, and but nevertheless, we clearly see that it was a remarkable miracle. And the Rebbe points out also, during the incarceration of the Alter Rebbe, of the founder of the Chabad movement, Rabbi Shneur Zalman, something similar also happened like that. Famous incident took place when the Alter Rebbe, many of you are familiar with the story, when the Alter Rebbe was being ferried on a boat at night to be interrogated in the city of St. Petersburg.
Excuse me.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Okay. When those guys are strong. Wow. When the Rebbe was being sent to prison, it was a fortress in St. Petersburg called the Peter Paul Fortress. And it was on, I think, the Volga River. It was a very, very large river in St. Petersburg. And in order to get to the prison, you had to go by boat across the river. So the Alter Rebbe was taken, it was a Saturday night, and he was taken by boat across the river. It was a dark night, and the moon was out, and the Rebbe said to the boat driver, he said, the Alter Rebbe asked the captain to stop the boat, so that he, the Alter Rebbe, could say the blessing over the new moon, Kiddush Levana, which you should say, stopping, not moving. So he wanted to say to do it, but when the captain refused his request, the boat suddenly remained stuck in its place. The boat stopped. It wouldn't move. Again, the Alter Rebbe requested the captain to stop the boat. This time he acquiesced. He saw that something very remarkable was happening. The Alter Rebbe stood up and recited Kiddush Lavan. The preparation for a mitzvah, therefore, must have miraculous overtone, may have miraculous overtone, but the mitzvah itself must be performed in a natural way. So, the miracles, you're not going to find today any splitting of the Red Sea, or 10 plagues in Egypt, or things like that. We do find miracles that happen today. People ask me all the time, do miracles take place today? We sure do. When a baby is born, so many miracles happen in our daily life. I don't know if I mentioned to you that I have an aunt, my mother's sister, 97 years old, and she came down with COVID-19 virus. She was hospitalized and sent to the ICU. And we were all ready to say Kaddish and make burial arrangements for her. Miraculously, she made it. She came out of it. As a matter of fact, I just spoke to her before I came here. It was amazing what happened. Nothing short of miraculous. Can you imagine a 97-year-old woman going through these things in an ICU to survive something like that? So clearly, and I asked her about it, Auntie Evelyn, she said it was a miracle. She's not such a religious woman, but she saw herself what happened was amazing. Of course, you have to realize also she had great doctors, good doctors, and things worked out well in that respect as well. She was treated very well, but still, amazing how she survived with all of this. Amazing thing.
Did she recognize the miracle?
Yes, she did. Because it was, people of that age didn't survive it. They just didn't. And not only that, but she also, before that, she had breast cancer a couple years earlier. When she was taken to the hospital, she had pneumonia. And they diagnosed it as the virus. They diagnosed it as the virus. And she survived all that stuff. Amazing. Incredible. I mean, I think she told me that the doctors themselves couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe it. So, nevertheless, we can't just depend on a miracle and sit back and, do nothing. We need to make sure, that you believe in going to doctors and taking care of yourself and, doing all these things.
It seems that the Rebbe, though, is mentioning that the majority of our effort has to be in a normal fashion.
Right. In fact, he's going to say, I don't know if we'll get to it, he's going to say that there are two eras of the coming Mashiach. There are two. The first era of the coming Mashiach is when everything happens b'derech hateva, in a normal, natural way. People are born, people die. People get sick, people do this, people do that, you go to work, etc., etc. That's the normal way of the world. The second era of Mashiach will take place shortly after, some say within 40 years, and that will be bodies beyond souls beyond bodies, where the soul is liberated. Again, the term liberation. The soul is liberated from the body. So we find these two aspects. The Rambam in his Hilchos Malachim, in the laws dealing with kings at the very end, he points out the first stage of the coming of Mashiach. That's why some people say, the Rambam did not believe in any second stage. He believed only in the first stage, but he was only speaking of the first stage. But the Rambam certainly recognized the second stage. But, so nevertheless, we need to act according to normal activity. He says here, this liberation of Yiddish Talmud, which will lead us to the ultimate redemption, every salvation bears the name redemption. As such, it has a common denominator with every other salvation. Thus, the liberation of the Nasi, of the leader, of the previous Rebbe, is associated with the ultimate and true redemption. through our increased efforts in dissemination of Torah and strengthening Yiddishkeit, the Master Mashiach will come. And I believe very much, I believe very much that the Rebbe himself, our Rebbe, hoped and prayed and wished for the coming of Mashiach from a very young age. Some say even from the age of 5 or 6 or younger. The Rebbe fervently believed that Mashiach was going to come, even from a very young age. In fact, it's rare to meet a child who doesn't believe in Mashiach coming. You talk to any kid who goes to Jewish school, and they believe in Mashiach, unless their parents brainwash them not to believe it. But most kids believe in that. They do. They believe in that. And the Rebbe fervently believed in the coming Mashiach. And he recognized the fact that we need to give Mashiach a push. Certainly Mashiach is going to come when he's going to come. But Mashiach needs to be pushed a little bit. And we are allowed to do that in Jewish law. We're allowed to do that. We find that there are many mitzvahs associated with Mashiach. Right? And many of these are connected with Mashiach. So the fact is that we are allowed and even encouraged to, by the performance of mitzvahs, to do that. Of course, we're going to also talk about later that there's a tradition in Judaism, our sages tell us, that if the Jewish people keep 2 Shabbases, let's say 2 Shabbases in a row, Mashiach will come.
Today's Daf Yomi.
Huh?
It's today's Daf Yomi.
That's right. Exactly. If they keep 2 Shabbases in a row, Mashiach will come. So, so all of these things, so the Rebbe believed very much that by increasing the observance of mitzvah among Jewish people, he will come to help to further the coming of Mashiach. And therefore, Yom Talmud, and therefore the Shabbos, is an auspicious time for activities gearing to speeding up, he says, the ultimate redemption. This includes increased Ahavas Yisrael, Jewish unity. The previous Rebbe often explained that the Golus was brought about because of unwarranted hatred among Jews. By increasing love of your fellow Jews, Jewish unity, you nullify the cause of the Golus. And when the Golus is eliminated, then the effect disappears, and the Golus comes to an end. So the whole reason why the temples were destroyed, the second temple anyway, especially, was Sinas China. In fact, our sages tell us that also the first temple also had an aspect of Sinas China as well. And by correcting that error, we will help rebuild the temple. Therefore, it just goes on to talking about how Yud Beis Tammuz is connected also to Shiva Sarva Tammuz, the 17th of Tammuz, which takes place this next week, a few days after Yud Beis Tammuz, and the fast of Yud Beis Tammuz is connected also to the idea of Galus, because it was on Yud Beis Tammuz that the walls of Jerusalem, Zion, the walls of Jerusalem were conquered, were broken. He also brings down, interestingly, that the Gemara Yerushalmi says that the first temple, the walls of Jerusalem were destroyed on the 9th of Tammuz, and it was on the second temple that they were destroyed on the 17th, the walls of Jerusalem rather. But the Yerushalmi says that it really actually happened on Yud Zion. It's just that they calculated the day incorrectly, and they said the 9th, but it says in the Yerushalmi it was actually the 17th also. In both times, first temple and second temple, the Jerusalem, the walls were breached during that time as well. So, by correcting the faults of hatred and disunity that you find, unfortunately today, you find that a lot today. Look, Israel just had 3 elections, 2 elections. 3 elections. This type of stuff.
The 4th one is coming.
Yeah. So that is exactly the opposite of Jewish unity. Although they came together and they made a government. So, okay. I will hold it here.
Thank you.
Forever.
Thank you very much.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Sure.